My upstairs neighbors are dead. At least I think they are. This story is based on my real-life experiences with nightmares, sleep paralysis, and potentially deceased neighbors. I live in an apartment complex just a block or so away from my college campus. Needless to say, most if not all of my neighbors are students as well. I've been here for almost a year and I've barely seen most of them. People just don't spend much time in the hallways or on the stairs. Sometimes we'll hear a party going on in the apartment across the hall from me, or smell someone cooking as I walk down the hallway. Other than that, I honestly couldn't tell you which apartments were even occupied. Except for one. The one right above me. Nobody could party like these guys did. At least once a week, I'd hear the drunken karaoke singing along to everything from metal to pop music. They danced to everything, too. I could hear the stomping and tapping through the ceiling. I have to admit, they weren't the best neighbors. Their late-night jam sessions sometimes didn't even start until midnight and weren't limited to weekends. Like for me, I'm a heavy sleeper. Well, at least I was at the time. The laundry room was on the second floor along with my neighbors, so once while I was waiting on my clothes to come out of the washer, I passed by their room on my way back to my apartment. Music was blasting as usual, and I could hear at least two muffled voices singing off-key rock ballads. It was easy to tell which was the one right above mine, since the first and second floor are almost exact copies of each other as far as layout goes. Just like mine is at the end of the hallway on the left, all alone, cut off from the next apartment by a door leading to the back staircase. I didn't have any intention of confronting them or anything. I didn't really care that much. I just remember standing by the staircase door, feeling heavy guitar riffs send vibrations through the walls. Looking back, that was one of the last times I heard from them, and could be sure it wasn't something else. Weeks go by, and eventually I start to realize that something is up. I probably would have noticed sooner if everything had gone totally quiet, but that's not what happened. The sounds of rampant partying stopped, but that's not the only thing I ever heard from my neighbors upstairs. The walls of my apartment complex aren't exactly paper thin, but the creaking floorboards upstairs are enough that if I wasn't playing any music of my own, I could hear them walking. I'm rarely awake late enough at night to hear them creep across the floor, but it always sounded eerily close. Sometimes I swore it sounded like it was in the room with me. I couldn't shake the feeling I wasn't alone until I looked around to make sure. That, along with the occasional sound of someone dropping heavy objects or moving furniture, persisted. The partying stopped. If my sleep was affected before, I might have been happier about the quieter nights, but it didn't matter much to me at first. That's when the nightmare started. I'm certainly no stranger to bad dreams, but never anything like this. It wasn't the intensity, but the consistency that alarmed me. I would have vivid, detailed nightmares 3 or 4 times a week, sometimes enough to wake me up at 3 in the morning. I'd feel so consumed with an inexplicable feeling of dread and panic that sometimes I couldn't close my eyes long enough to fall asleep. The sound of creaking floorboards sounded like it was right outside my bedroom door. Now the nightmares come almost every night. It's been that way for a while. With them, they brought new tools to deprive me of sleep. I started to suffer sleep paralysis, something I've never experienced before. When that and the nightmares teamed up, I would find myself lying half awake in bed, and suddenly I'd lose almost all ability to move, like someone cut a cord in my brain. With all my strength, I could force my foot to shake from side to side, nothing more. As I lie there, thankful I can at least breathe and wondering if I'll have that luxury next time, I hear it. Sometimes I feel it. A nightmare manifesting in my waking world, just out of sight. Once, it was a big, fat fly buzzing around before landing on top of my head with a smack. When I finally regained my motor skills and checked my hair and my bed, there was nothing there. Another time, it was a swarm of bugs. Another time, I was laying on the couch late at night watching TV. The glow from the screen was the only light on. I started dozing off, but before I could fully fall asleep, snap. Couldn't move. I laid there, frozen. As I struggled in vain to force the feeling back into my body, I heard a deep, guttural growl. It sounded inches away from my head. I couldn't even turn to prove to myself that there was nothing there. For at least 10 agonizing seconds, I was helpless and terrified. When I was freed, I turned on every light and checked every inch of my apartment. It didn't help. I didn't sleep that night. Losing my ability to sleep, and in fact developing a fear of even trying, distracted me from my upstairs neighbors. As a result, pinning down exactly when their suspected demise occurred is difficult. The paranoia I developed by this point had made me a very light sleeper, and when I sat awake in the middle of the night, I noticed a few things. The first was that the noises made by my upstairs neighbors had lost almost all variety. No more muffled conversations, no more music or singing, not even the sound of a dragged chair or table. I heard only two things from upstairs since I've started paying attention again. The creak of someone walking from one end of the apartment to the other, and the occasional series of thuds against the floor. Maybe it's just the newfound macabre creativity born of my unfortunate experiences, but I began to imagine that my neighbors upstairs were dead. That the creeping noise, slow and steady from one end of the apartment to the other, belongs to whoever or whatever killed them. That the methodical thud, thud, thud is something banging their long dead skulls against the floor. Of course, there's absolutely no way I'm going up there to try and find out. I've seen enough horror movies to know better. I'd rather live in fear that such a scenario may be the horrifying reality than be the next victim of whatever is currently calling that room home. I've already had at least one nightmare in which I find myself peering down the hallway at their apartment and see the door open just a crack. I step forward cautiously, seeing only darkness inside. As I draw near and push the door open, I find myself face to face with something terrible. Something I only know likes to take late night walks and has a desire to kill, kept at bay only by the solitude it now enjoys. I know it hasn't forgotten, doesn't regret, continues to reenact its grisly crime every few nights, possibly for habit, possibly for pleasure. Sometimes I wonder if they have the nightmares too. Maybe they stayed up and partied all night to keep their minds off the things they saw in their dreams. The things that sometimes wouldn't stay confined to their minds. Cut the connections in their brains that control their limbs and gently touch the tops of their heads. Maybe they just quietly moved out, but someone much more tame moved in, all without a trace. Maybe they started partying at a friend's place. All I know is this: I look forward to moving out in a few months.